I was talking to a few people about the order in New Mexico, the gun ban in certain parts of New Mexico, and from the Googling of news reports, I couldn't find the order. But I have found the order. It's actually two orders by the governor herself and the public health order by the New Mexico Department of Health, Secretary Patrick M. Allen. And I'm going to start with that one because this is the one that has all the details. The governor's two orders referred to in this order will follow. So this is a public health order, New Mexico Department of Health, Secretary Patrick M. Allen, September 8, 2023. Public health emergency order imposing temporary firearm restrictions, drug monitoring and other public safety measures. Whereas for the reasons stated in Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham's Executive Orders 2023-130 and 2023-132, gun violence and drug abuse currently constitute statewide public health emergencies as defined in the Public Health Emergency Response Act. Whereas pursuant to those executive orders, I've begun collaborating with the New Mexico Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management, the New Mexico Department of Public Safety and the Governor's Office to provide an effective and coordinated response to these public health emergencies. Whereas the New Mexico Department of Health possesses legal authority pursuant to the Public Health Act, NMSA 1978, gives citations, the Department of Health Act, citation, and inherent constitutional police powers of the New Mexico state government to preserve and promote public health and safety, to maintain and enforce rules for the control of a condition of public health importance, and whereas temporary firearm restrictions, drug monitoring and other public safety measures are necessary to address the current public health emergencies. Now therefore, I, Patrick M. Allen, Secretary of the New Mexico Department of Health, in accordance with the authority vested in me by the Constitution and laws of the State of New Mexico, and as directed by the Governor pursuant to the full scope of emergency powers under the All Hazard Emergency Management Act, do hereby declare that gun violence and drug use constitute conditions of public health importance as defined in citation, and hereby order and direct as follows. 1. No person other than a law enforcement officer or licensed security officer shall possess a firearm as defined in citation, either openly or concealed within cities or counties averaging 1,000 or more violent crimes per 100,000 residents per year since 2021, according to Federal Bureau of Investigation's Uniform Crime Reporting Program, and more than 90 firearm-related emergency department visits per 100,000 residents from July 2022 to June 2023, according to the New Mexico Department of Public Health, except A. on private property owned or immediately controlled by the person, B. on private property that is not open to the public with the express permission of the person who owns or immediately controls such property, C. while on the premises of a licensed firearm dealer or gunsmith for the purpose of lawful transfer or repair of a firearm, D. while engaged in the legal use of a firearm at a properly licensed firing range or sport shooting competition venue, or E. while travelling to or from a location listed in paragraphs 1 through 4 of this section, provided that the firearm is in a locked container or locked with a firearm safety device that renders the firearm inoperable, such as a trigger lock. 2. The New Mexico Regulations and Licensing Department shall conduct monthly inspections of licensed firearm dealers in the state to ensure compliance with all sales and storage laws. 3. The Department of Health shall within 20 days compile and issue a comprehensive report on gunshot victims presenting at hospital in New Mexico, which shall include, if available, demographic data of gunshot victims, including age, gender, race and ethnicity, data on gunshot victims' healthcare outcomes, the brand and caliber of the firearm used, the general circumstances leading to the injury, the impact of gunshot victims on New Mexico's healthcare system, and any other pertinent information. 4. No person other than a law enforcement officer or a licensed security officer shall possess a firearm on state property, public schools, and public parks. 5. The New Mexico Department of Health and the New Mexico Environmental Department shall develop a program to conduct wastewater testing for illicit substances such as fentanyl at all public schools. 6. The Children, Youth and Families Department shall immediately suspend the Juvenile Detention Alternative Initiative and evaluate juvenile probation protocols. 7. The Department of Public Safety shall dispatch additional officers and resources to Bernalillo County, you can correct me on that, and work with the F.UK.T Police Department and Bernalillo County Sheriff to determine the best use of those resources. 8. The Department of Public Safety shall coordinate with local law enforcement agencies and the District Attorney's Office and assist in apprehension of individuals with outstanding arrest warrants. I further direct as follows. 1. This order shall be broadly disseminated in English, Spanish and other appropriate languages to the citizens of the state of New Mexico. 2. Trigger locks shall be made available free of charge to all firearm owners, provided that each firearm owner shall only be entitled to one free trigger lock. Firearm owners wishing to obtain a free trigger lock should call the phone number or email. 3. The New Mexico Department of Health, the New Mexico Department of Public Safety, the New Mexico Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management, and all other state departments and agencies are authorized to take all appropriate steps to ensure compliance with this order. 4. Any person or entity who willfully violates this order may be subject to civil administrative penalties available at law. 5. This order shall take effect on September 8, 2023 and remain in effect for the duration of the public health emergencies declared in Executive Orders 2023-130 and 2023-132 and any subsequent renewals of those public health emergency declarations unless otherwise rescinded. 6. Should any provision of this order or its application to any person or circumstances be held invalid by a court of law, the remainder of this order or the application of its provisions to other persons or circumstances shall remain in full force and effect. And that's attested to by Maggie Toulouse-Oliver, Secretary of State. It's done on the 8th of September and witnessed by the Secretary of State, New Mexico Department of Health, Patrick M. Allen. Right, on to the Executive Order 2023-130. So this is from the Governor. Declaring state of public health emergency due to gun violence, whereas New Mexico consistently has some of the highest rates of gun violence in the nation, whereas the rate of gun deaths in New Mexico increased 43% from 2009 to 2018, compared to an 18% increase over this same time period nationwide. Whereas guns are the leading cause of death among children and teens in New Mexico and have led to the deaths of a 13-year-old girl on July 28, a 5-year-old girl on August 14, and an 11-year-old boy on September 6. Whereas New Mexico has recently experienced an increasing amount of mass shootings, including mass shootings in Farmington and Red River this year. Whereas these gun-related deaths and injuries have resulted in devastating physical and emotional consequences for individuals, families and communities throughout the state. Whereas the impact of gun violence extends beyond physical injuries and fatalities, causing emotional trauma, economic burdens and long-lasting consequences for those affected individuals and their families. Whereas the increasing number of gunshot victim strains are already overburdened healthcare system and places undue pressure on medical professionals and resources. Whereas after consulting with the Secretary of the Department of Health, I have determined that the foregoing situation constitutes a statewide public health emergency of unknown duration as defined by the Public Health Emergency Response Act, and whereas the foregoing situation also constitutes a man-made disaster causing or threatening widespread physical or economic harm that is beyond local control and requiring the resources of the state pursuant to the All Hazard Emergency Management Act. Now therefore, I, Michelle Lujan Grisham, Governor of the State of New Mexico, by the authority vested in me by the Constitution and laws of the State of New Mexico, do hereby declare that a state of public emergency exists throughout the state due to gun violence and order and direct as follows. 1. The Department of Health, Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management, and Department of Public Safety shall immediately begin collaborating with my office to provide an effective and coordinated response to this public health emergency. The Department of Finance and Administration shall make available emergency financial resources in an amount not to exceed $750,000. That's right. to the Department of Health, Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management and/or Department of Public Safety in accordance with citation. Funds shall be expended for the purpose of complying with this order and shall be expended specifically to avoid and minimise economic or physical harm and to protect the public health, safety and welfare. Funds shall be paid out upon warrants drawn by the Secretary of Finance and Administration, upon vouchers approved by the Governor or an agent or agency designated by her for that purpose. 3. All mayors, sheriffs and members of governing bodies or of municipalities or counties are encouraged to request, if necessary, an emergency proclamation and implementation of temporary additional restrictions to address this public health emergency pursuant to the Riot Control Act. 4. All political subdivisions of the state shall comply with and enforce all directives issued pursuant to this order. I further order and direct as follows. 1. This order supersedes any previously orders, proclamations or directives to the extent they are in conflict. 2. This order shall take effect immediately and shall remain in effect until October 6th, 2023. And it's signed by the Governor, and that was on the 7th of September. Now on to the second executive order. This is Executive Order 2032-132, declaring state of public health emergency due to drug abuse. Whereas the state of New Mexico has witnessed a growing and alarming trend of drug abuse, including the misuse of prescription opioids, fentanyl, heroin and other illegal substances. Whereas the devastating consequences of drug abuse have resulted in a significant increase in drug-related deaths, with 1,501 fatal overdoses reported in the state in 2021, the fifth highest overdose rate in the nation according to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. Whereas communities across New Mexico are grappling with the social and economic burdens of drug addiction, including the strain on healthcare resources, increased crime rates, homelessness, and disrupted family structures. Whereas the accessibility and prevalence of potent synthetic opioids such as fentanyl have escalated the risks associated with drug abuse, contributing to a surge in overdose incidents. Whereas the healthcare system in New Mexico is facing unprecedented challenges due to demands placed on emergency rooms, treatment facilities, and first responders as a result of the drug abuse crisis. Whereas the children and youth of New Mexico are particularly vulnerable to the negative impacts of drug abuse, as evidenced by the rising number of cases involving parental substance abuse and its subsequent effect on child welfare. Whereas the state's existing efforts to combat drug abuse, including prevention, treatment, and law enforcement initiatives, require immediate reinforcement and coordination to effectively address the public health crisis. Whereas, after consulting with the Secretary of the Department of Health, I have determined that the foregoing situation constitutes a statewide public health emergency of unknown duration, as defined by the Public Health Emergency Response Act. Whereas the foregoing situation also constitutes a man-made disaster causing or threatening widespread physical or economic harm that is beyond local control and requiring the resources of the state pursuant to the All Hazard Emergency Management Act. And whereas it is essential to marshal all available resources to mitigate the harms caused by drug abuse and to provide support and treatment options for individuals and families affected by this epidemic. Now therefore I, Michelle Yuhan Grisham, Governor of the State of New Mexico, by the authority vested in me by the Constitution and laws of the State of New Mexico, do hereby declare that a state of public emergency exists throughout the state due to drug abuse, and order and direct as follows. 1. The Department of Public Health, Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management and Department of Public Safety shall immediately begin collaborating with my office to provide an effective and coordinated response to this public health emergency. 2. The Department of Finance and Administration shall make available emergency financial resources in the amount not to exceed $750,000 to the Department of Health, Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management and/or Department of Public Safety in accordance with and citation. Funds shall be expended for the purpose of complying with this order and shall be expended specifically to avoid and minimise economic or physical harm and to protect the public health, safety and welfare. Funds shall be paid out upon warrants drawn by the Secretary of Finance and Administration, upon vouchers approved by the Governor or an agent or agency designated by her for that purpose. 3. All mayors, sheriffs and members of governing bodies or municipalities or counties are encouraged to request, if necessary, an emergency proclamation and implementation of temporary additional restrictions to address this public health emergency. 4. All political subdivisions of the state shall comply with and enforce all directives issued pursuant to this order. I further order and direct as follows. This order supersedes any previous orders, proclamations or directives to the extent they are in conflict. 2. This order shall take effect immediately and shall remain in effect until October 6, 2023. Again, that's signed by the Governor. Thanks for watching.